This is CJP UFC Bets. Welcome back to another great show, another great breakdown for UFC Fight Night San Antonio, Vera versus Sandhagen. This is going to be another great card, another interesting main event. Two of the top bantamweights in the world going one on one, and whoever wins this fight should become the number one contender for the bantamweight championship. So before we do the breakdown, I want to make sure that you guys subscribe to the channel, make sure you like the channel, comment on the video, make sure to smash that subscribe button, guys, because each and every single week we will give you our free picks, free bets, and free breakdowns right here on this channel. And joining me here tonight again is Monique. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. Like, I have some questions when it comes to yesterday's card that we will address very shortly. Other than that, I'm doing great, and I can't wait to break down this weekend's card.
Thanks for so much for joining us here again. I appreciate it. And yeah, last night was a very interesting card. A lot of surprises in my book. I went 8-7 on my pick, so not too shabby. And yeah, how'd you do last night?
Dude, I did horrible. Like, legit 5-9. I guess you want to say like wins and losses, right? 5-9 on my picks. Like, obviously there's some that I question the judge's decision, and we're gonna talk about that in just a little bit. My bets didn't hit because, like I said, the judges like kind of screwed me over. I feel like on one or two of the fights, I didn't bet on Maya, and I was surprised I didn't. I think the odds weren't as good as I hoped for, so that's why I didn't bet on her. But I should have, because she pulled through for me against Casey O'Neill. So other than that, I didn't do too well. But we have this week to redeem ourselves. So let's go. Let's get it.
Absolutely. Let's bounce back. I did hit a few of my bets. I did not post my bets this week because I was so busy, but I did hit a few of my prop bets. I did hit like over the 1.5 fight goes a distance, fight doesn't go a distance in a couple fights. Um, yeah, let's talk about UFC 286. My lock of the card, Juliana Miller, just laid an egg for me. I thought she was gonna win this fight easily, and she did not look too well. What'd you think about that fight?
Well, I was out doing BJJ during that time of the fight, so I had to catch some of the highlights. From what people told me, like, Macedo looked really good. Oh, or Hardy, if you want to call her Mrs. Hardy now. She credits her win to her husband, who is now PFL Europe's like operation of fighters, which is really cool. And so I thought I was surprised, but at the same time, we have this matchups for a reason to test fighters that come from either tough or the contender series if they can measure up to real competition. And Veronica Hardy Macedo is some real competition for, even though people underestimate her. So good for her for winning that fight. Totally proved pretty much like 80% of MMA Twitter wrong. And that's one of the reasons why we love watching this sport, is moments like this where we do get proven wrong and then we have to reassess and keep doing fight analysis.
Yes, I agree. I was totally caught off guard with that fight. I thought Juliana Miller was just gonna make it look easy, and I was totally wrong. So good for Veronica Hardy. She's gonna be someone to look out for in that division. Um, I'm not totally gonna fade Juliana Miller just yet. She's still young. She's still learning and up and coming. So we'll see how she goes in her future fights. And let's talk about my dog of the card, Roman Dolidze versus Marvin Vettori. That was a great fight. I thought that Roman Dolidze was gonna win a couple times there.
Yeah, no, there were a lot of moments, in my opinion, that he caught Vittori in his strikes. It was pretty obvious. So when I saw the stats afterwards, I was really surprised because a lot of the stats pointed in favor of Vittori. And I guess that's one of the reasons why he won in the judges', eyes and all that, right? So very surprising. I honestly have to rewatch that fight again because I still don't agree with the judges. I don't agree with the stats. I thought that Roman had more strikes to the head. I thought so, like from watching the fight. Now I had people on Twitter pretty much say like, oh, you're wrong. Marvin totally won that fight. I'm like, maybe I am wrong. Maybe I have to watch that fight over and reassess. And that's one of the reasons why I have UFC Fight Pass now, so I can rewatch all the fights and pretty much reassess my judgments. So it was kind of disappointing to see the judges kind of favor Vettori, because I thought that a win over Vettori would just kind of skyrocket Roman Dolidze into the top 15, right? But
right. I mean, Roman Dolidze is still a beast in my eyes. He's still a great competitor, and he's still somebody to look out for in that division. And I think it was the leg kicks that did him in. That's what won Marvin Vettori the fight. And but it was close. He did rock him a couple times, but we all know that Marvin Vettori got that block head, that solid steel chin that nobody has ever figured out yet. But there's gonna come a time where somebody's gonna crack him and he's gonna get knocked out. And how about the co-main event, which was a banger, as I mentioned in our last breakdown? It was Justin Gaethje and Rafael Fiziev. That was fight of the night for me. I mean, I picked Fiziev, and I was totally wrong on that. Justin Gaethje came out there and proved everyone that there's levels to this. And yeah, he's a problem. Justin Gaethje still got it.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely was wrong about that. I had Fiziev winning just because of his lightning speed and his power. Those are the reasons why I picked him, and why a lot of people picked him in the first place, because of his past fights. But Gaethje totally surprised me. Like, I think just because he's lost against some really heavy grapplers in the past, so it kind of threw me off, when it came to picking which fighter I thought was going to win this co-main event. But he really, just outstruck him. He picked him apart. It was very pinpoint, accurate striking at the end of the day. And then obviously I think it was one or two takedowns. The one takedown at the end was really necessary, I think, because Fiziev got a little bit tired and gassed towards the end. And I thought that was the icing on the cake for Justin Gaethje. So good for him. I feel bad for Fiziev, because I know, it's hard to get to that point and then to not make it and not to win, because I think the winner of this could have been in some type of contention spot for the title, even though that division is really stacked. It could have meant something really big for Fiziev. So I do feel really bad for him, but at the same time, this is part of the game. This is the reason why we watch this sport. And good on Justin Gaethje. I hope he continues this kind of performance in his next fight.
Yeah, he said that he wants to redeem the fight with Dustin Poirier. If that rematch happens, that's going to be another banger. And I do see a path to victory for Justin Gaethje in that fight.
Before you switch over to which fight we're gonna go on to next, there is one thing I have to address. So Justin Gaethje just put out a tweet recently saying he was very upset with the whole Michael Bisping's commentary. He thought it was very biased. Right. I knew you catch that. So that's why I wanted to talk about it, because honestly, I agree with him. I think with Bisping and DC, not saying they're bad commentators, but they are very biased. They only talked about Maia 90% of that match. They only sprinkled in a little bit of Casey O'Neill here and there. And so I thought that was really, kind of biased for them. And I would say, if me and you were doing the commentary for UFC, I feel like we would set aside our biases and just talk about the fight. And I feel like we just need to see more of that from those commentators. What do you think about that, Carlos?
I agree with what Justin Gaethje said, and I agree with what you just said. I feel like sometimes, or a lot of the time actually, some of these commentators, especially guys like what's his name? I forgot. You just said it right there.
Oh, DC Michael Bisping.
DC, yeah, DC and Michael Bisping. Sorry, DC and Michael Bisping can be biased with certain fighters, especially DC with the Russian fighters.
Yeah, I mean, because it's they all train at a similar academy, so I kind of understand, but right. you gotta set your biases aside if you're gonna be professional in this industry, So anyways, I just wanted to mention that before you went on to the main event.
Yes, the main event. Let's talk about that. Usman versus Edwards 3. That was a good fight. In my mind, Usman did not look himself in that fight. He looked kind of slow, kind of labored, in my opinion, and he looked a little bit uninterested, right? In my opinion, that's what I saw. And Edwards went in there and he did what he had to do. He outstruck Usman. He did.
Hmm.
He won the fight. I thought he won the fight. I was kind of surprised that Usman didn't use his wrestling more. And he did use his wrestling in the fight, but we saw that Edwards worked on that and his takedown defense has tremendously went up. So, what do you think about
Yeah,
the event?
I honestly thought that. Okay, so I have the judges' scorecard screenshotted on my phone right now, and there was one judge that gave that round to Leon. You know the round where he grabbed the fence?
Yep.
He gave that to Leon that round. So there was one judge that gave him that round. And usually you would think with the point deduction that round would go to the opponent, but apparently not in this case. So that was one thing that surprised me. Other than that, I think Leon figured out Usman,
Yep.
and his game. It was pretty obvious. We all knew he was going to shoot the takedown. Everybody knows that. Anybody who's faced Usman knows he's going to do that. So Leon prepared really well for this fight, so I can't fault him for that. I have to watch this fight over because I honestly thought that Usman did enough of the takedowns to win this fight, but I might be wrong. I thought that Leon put more of the pressure on towards the end of the fight, like the fourth and fifth round. I think he really like laid a lot of good strikes on Usman during that time. I agree with you in a sense where Usman didn't look like himself in terms of like he's usually more intense when he's in your
Hmm.
face, but all he did with Trevor Whitman's guidance was just walk towards him. But he didn't land many strikes. There was no jab whatsoever. Something was missing during that fight,
Right.
and you could just tell from his speech at the end, Usman's speech, saying that he's going to be back and all that. You could just tell he wasn't really super into this fight. He wasn't even that sad that he lost,
Right.
So
Yep.
it
Yep.
was just like very surprising. Other than that, I have to watch it over again, but it was a good fight at the end of the day.
I agree. Totally good fight. And then Dana White, I don't know if you heard this. Dana White did mention at the press conference that Colby Covington is the next contender for Leon Edwards, probably during International Fight Week or in October, somewhere around there. And between that time, I'm assuming October because Leon Edwards just have a 5 round fight with Usman, so he needs some time off to recover and train again. So I'm assuming around October that fight's gonna happen. What do you think about that announcement?
Dude, this is the reason why I have this wine glass here, okay? One of the reasons is because Kobe hasn't fought anyone in like the top 5 in pretty much a long time. And it's just not fair for him to get this like position where he's gonna fight for the title. Now, this is what we call a business move because the UFC knows Kobe has a huge fan base, and he also has a huge base that hates him at the same time. Very polarizing, He plays this character. He really gets the fans interested in it, just like WWE. I know you're like a huge pro wrestling kind of
Yep.
person, so you know how it
Yep.
is when these fighters or wrestlers have to put on a persona and they really get the fans into it, right? So
Right.
I feel like this is exactly what it is, and the fans like him. They hate him. UFC makes money off this fight. That's exactly why I think Kobe gets this shot because a lot of people are arguing should be Bilal or should be whoever, right?
Right.
So
I agree. I agree. Um he does not deserve this fight, this title shot, because he hasn't fought in a while. But he is in the top 5, and there's other fights in that division that are taking place, and he's probably going to be the only one available, the next best fighter to fight for that belt. So that's a reason why. Plus, like you said, he sells tickets, he sells pay-per-views, he puts asses in seats.
mhm.
So UFC is going to put him in that spot against Leon Edwards. And if that fight happens, I'm going with Colby Covington. I have to say, he's a better wrestler than Usman in my opinion, and he has more intensity than Usman in my opinion. And if you saw the Usman versus Covington fights, Covington, he did hold his own in those fights. So I gotta go with Covington. Early lean after before I do tape, obviously.
I think I somewhat agree with you because a lot of people underestimate Kobe's fight IQ. Like he's very smart in the octagon.
Yes.
Even though I'm not a fan of his per se, but I respect his game. I think he can definitely pressure Leon during that fight. I would love to see some wrestling from Kobe during that fight because I think it would serve him really well if this fight obviously comes to fruition. And I'm not saying that Leon doesn't have a chance in this fight. Of course he does. He could probably land another one of those kicks to the head and knock out Kobe. But Kobe has quite the chin on him too, right? So,
Yep.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. I know you guys are itching for our predictions and our breakdown for UFC Fight Night, San Antonio, Vera versus Sandhagen. Let's get into it, folks. Another great card, ladies and gentlemen, on deck. UFC Fight Night, San Antonio, Vera versus Sandhagen in the bantamweight division. 4 p.m. start time for the prelims, and I believe it's 7 p.m. Eastern time for the main card. The first fight of the night. Scheduled in the women's bantamweight division, we have Tamires Vidal versus Hailey Cowan. Tamires Vidal, she's 7-1, 24 years old, 5'6", with a 68-inch reach. Then we have Hailey Cowan. She's 7-2, 31 years old, 5'8", with a 69.3-inch reach. For Tamires Vidal, she has okay striking and likes to come forward with decent pressure on the feet. She's always throwing big bombs at her opponents, trying to knock them out with okay takedowns. She just bullies you to the ground if she can't take you down the traditional way, and she also has a decent ground game with sneaky KO power and sneaky submissions. So we'll see how that goes for her in this fight. For Hailey Cowan, she has decent striking with nice long jabs, decent KO power, and decent wrestling. She also has decent takedowns with a nice kickboxing style and uses her range pretty well. She also has a solid takedown defense with pretty decent cardio. This should be a close fight, closer than the number says, in my opinion. I have to go with Hailey Cowan in this fight by decision. Who are you going for?
Oh my gosh, we're starting off with a disagreement. Okay. Okay, I agree with why you chose Hailey in the first place. I think if this fight goes to decision, she has the advantage. Like you said, she has that takedown defense, which is going to serve her well against Vidal. She had that really beautiful wizard kick, which went in the Contender Series, which helped her get the takedown in that fight. She has sneaky power because that elbow to her opponent during that fight was beautiful. It cut her up really well. I picked Vidal because I think she does hit hard. The thing for me with her is that I like her BJJ. Like if it goes to the ground, I think she's gonna get her in a submission real fast, and she throws really hard. But my question when it comes to her is her gas tank. I wonder if she's gonna last, 3 rounds with Hailey, but I'm gonna go with Vidal because I do have a little bit of bias towards grapplers, and I think she's gonna get her in a sub.
All right. We can disagree on this fight. That's okay. I'm totally staying away betting wise, but for the purpose of the show, I gotta go with Hailey Cowan. I think she's a much better fighter, better cardio, and I don't know. I just like her better in this fight. All right, let's go on up to the next fight on the card, ladies and gentlemen. Scheduled in the men's flyweight division, we have Vinicius Salvador versus Victor Altamirano. For Vinicius Salvador, he has solid striking with a good amount of volume on the feet and has a pretty good range who likes to stay patient, take his time, and attack at the right moment. He's got good counter striking, decent head movement, and likes to bob and weave against the cage at times, which can work in his favor here. Not to mention, he has solid takedown defense, decent wrestling, and you can't sleep on that wrestling with Vinicius Salvador. He does like to get that going in his fights. For Altamirano, he's got pretty good striking, fast hands, and solid footwork. He has a decent get-up game, decent sweeps from the bottom, and he's got a decent ground game. He's got sneaky KO power, decent submissions, and decent cardio to go with it. He won't give up on his fights and won't shy away from a slugfest. This should be a close fight. I was going back and forth. I did not know who to pick. I have to go with Vinicius Salvador by knockout. Who are you going for?
Okay, I am like, this is a tie for me because I was just like you. When it comes to this fight, I was going back and forth, back and forth. I had Vinicius winning, then I had Victor winning. I I honestly think that Victor, with his speed, is going to it's going to be a really good factor in this fight. He does have sneaky KO power, like you said, but it's the fact that he can probably get you in a good sub is the reason why I am leaning towards him, even though I'm not 100% sure about that. I like El Magnifico. That's his nickname if you guys don't know it. I like his style of fighting. He seems really well-rounded, and I think that he'll be able to kind of, maneuver Vinicius's striking and his bobbing and weaving. I think he would have good head movement as well. So I'm leaning towards Altamirano, but at the same time, if Salvador wins, I'm not going to be surprised.
Yeah, this should be a close fight. Another fight I probably won't bet money line wise. I might bet some props like the under 2.5. I like that here. Both guys got finishing ability, in my opinion. So, but I have to go with Vinicius Salvador. I like his name, Vinicius.
Yeah, it's cool, right?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on up to the next fight on the card. Scheduled in the men's lightweight division, we have Manuel Torres versus Trey Ogden. Manuel Torres, he's 13-2, 28 years old, 5'10", with a 73-inch reach. Then we have Trey Ogden. He's 16-5, 33 years old, 5'11", with a 72-inch reach. For Manuel Torres, he's got pretty good striking, a high amount of volume on the feet, and pretty good grappling. He's got sneaky KO power with a nice clinch that he uses well while throwing nice sharp knees in that clinch. He also has pretty decent head movement. He's got good leg kicks, and he uses pretty good range throughout the fight. Not to mention, he's got pretty good submissions as well and decent cardio to go all 3 rounds. For Trey Ogden, he's got pretty solid grappling, decent takedowns, and decent wrestling. He also has solid KO power with pretty decent submissions to go with it. He likes to shoot pretty good double leg takedowns with decent ground game. He also has questionable gas tank with solid takedown defense and a decent chin, but I don't think that'll be enough to get the victory for him here. I have to go with Manuel Torres inside the distance. Who are you going for?
Yes, we are finally agreeing on this show for the first time within this hour. I'm very happy about that because when it comes to Torres and when it came to, analyzing his tape, I was really leaning towards that nasty right hook of his. Like, I think he's going to catch Ogden with that right hook. Even though Ogden is like a really well-rounded fighter, especially with his takedowns. If he gets a takedown to Torres, that'd be, obviously a game changer in this fight. But I don't think this is going the distance. I agree with you. I can see this going maybe the most 2 rounds, if not maybe 1.5. That's what I'm guessing if I were to make a prop for this fight, and I think he's going to catch him with the right hook. I think Torres is going to win. He's called El Loco for a reason, right? And so I think that's one of the things that people have to watch out for in this fight.
Absolutely. I definitely think Manuel Torres gets the victory here some way, somehow. Let's Move on up to the next fight, ladies and gentlemen. Scheduled in the men's flyweight division, we have CJ Vergara versus Daniel De Silva. 1 second. They always move the bout order at the last second for me, so
I
I got.
know.
I hate that about typology, but that's okay. CJ Vergara, he's 10-4. 31 years old, 5'6", with a 68-inch reach. Then we have Daniel De Silva. He's 11-4, 26 years old, 5'6", with a 70-inch reach. For CJ Vergara, he's got pretty good striking with nice clean boxing and throws solid knees to the body. He likes to fight inside the pocket and has a nice solid clinch with sneaky KO power. He also has decent takedowns with solid footwork and is decently fast on the feet with a solid chin to go all 3 rounds. For De Silva, this guy is a kill or be killed type of fighter with pretty decent striking and solid grappling. He likes to come forward with solid pressure on the feet with a decent amount of KO power in his hands, and he also has a pretty decent ground game with good submissions to go with it. This should be a very fun fight, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going with CJ Vergara inside the distance. Who are you going for, Monique?
I definitely agree with you. I think I have CJ winning this fight. I think the knees to the body and the fact that he can move around the octagon so well with those strikes, with the decent takedown defense and the KO power that's what sold it for me when it came to analyzing this fight. When it comes to Daniel De Silva, though, he is coming off of 3 losses, so there might be a sense of urgency there, when it comes to actually performing really well in this fight, maybe trying to get this to the ground, maybe trying to put a submission on CJ. I can definitely see that. But I think, more likely than not, Vergara is just very, very fast moving, and I think it's going to catch De Silva off guard, and he's going to win the fight probably by TKO, in my opinion, round 2.
Yes, I agree. Inside the distance for me because Vergara does have submissions on his record, so I can see him pulling off a submission here. But either way, CJ Vergara, I'm glad we agree. Let's move on up to the next fight, ladies and gentlemen. Scheduled in the men's welterweight division, we have Trevin Giles versus Preston Parsons. Trevin Giles, he's 15-4, 30 years old, 6'0" with a 74-inch reach. Then we have Preston Parsons. He's 10-3, 27 years old, 5'11" with a 72-inch reach. For Trevin Giles, he's got very solid grappling with pretty decent striking and good jabs. He's pretty quick on the feet and likes to work in and out of range with pretty decent combinations to go with it. He has okay wrestling and very good submission defense. He also has pretty good athleticism, and he's got good enough cardio to go all 3 rounds. For Parsons, he's got pretty decent striking, a high amount of volume on the feet, and he's got very slick grappling to go with it. He also has good submissions with very solid BJJ, and he also has a BJJ black belt with good takedowns. He also is very tough. He has a good gas tank, and he will bite down on his mouthpiece, always moving forward with pressure on his feet. This is going to be a good fight, ladies and gentlemen. I have to go with Preston Parsons by decision. Who are you going for, Monique?
Yeah, I was nervous to hear who you're going to pick because I was like, this might change the tide, when it comes to this broadcast. But I agree. I picked Parsons to win. I am a huge fan of anybody with really slick BJJ, especially if he gets this to the ground. Now, I know that Giles has pretty decent takedown defense, but I think Parsons is just going to be relentless. He's going to pressure forward. Like his nickname, Pressure, says, all about it in his fights. That's what he does, and that's why he ends up winning by submission after submission after submission. And it's just been really, incredible to watch so far. Giles has a really good chance of winning in this fight too. It's just that I think Parsons is going to be relentless and he's going to catch him in whatever submission he wants.
I definitely agree with that. I like Preston Parsons in this fight. I just think Trevin Giles is tough enough to last the 3 rounds unless Preston Parsons Does catch him in that submission, like you said. But either way, Preston Parsons by decision or submission, I might play that in one of my slips. Let's move on up to the next fight, ladies and gentlemen. Scheduled in the men's featherweight division, we have Steven Peterson versus Lucas Alexander. Steven Peterson, he's 19 and 10, 32 years old, 5'10", with a 70-inch reach. Then we have Lucas Alexander. He's 7 and 3, 27 years old, 5'11", with a 73-inch reach. For Steven Peterson, he's got decent striking, a decent amount of volume on the feet, and decent takedowns. He also has decent wrestling and a solid takedown defense with decent grappling. He's got decent cardio, a decent chin, and it's very, very tough. But he is hittable at times, which I do not like much. For Lucas Alexander, he's got solid striking and a decent amount of KO power in his hands. He's got decent ones and twos and throws decent combinations with decent grappling. He also has decent submissions, an okay ground game, and decent cardio. He can be he has the tendency to get caught up in sticky spots sometimes, which I do not like. But ultimately, I do think he's tough. My pick for this fight, very close, not gonna bet it. Steven Peterson by decision. Who are you going for, Monique?
Yeah, this one was a little bit tough for me to choose because with Steven Peterson, he has that experience on him where he's faced more competition in the UFC. So when I was analyzing this fight, I really had to take that into consideration. He did win against one, well-known fighter, Chase Hooper, which we all know. So that was really impressive on his part. But he did lose a lot of decisions, and so with Lucas Alexander, he's won a couple of decisions here and there, and he has that kind of KO power that's like sneaky but kind of there. So I'm gonna choose the dog in this fight, slight dog, plus 150 on my books, Lucas Alexander. But if Peterson pulls off a well-rounded kind of fight, I'm not gonna be surprised.
All right, okay. We don't agree on this fight. It should be close. That's why I'm not betting it whatsoever. Let's move on up to the next fight, ladies and gentlemen. Scheduled to be the featured prelim fight for UFC Fight Night San Antonio, Vera versus Sandhagen. And before we do this breakdown, folks, make sure to subscribe, make sure to smash that like button, comment on this video who your picks are, your dog of the card is, who your lock of the card is, all that. And make sure to support my friend Monique on her channel, Fights Unwrapped. This fight is scheduled in the men's featherweight division. We have Daniel Pineda versus Tucker Lutz. Daniel Pineda, he's 27 and 14, 37 years old, 5'7", with a 70-inch reach. Then we have Tucker Lutz. He's 12 and 2, 28 years old, 5'8", with a 72-inch reach. For Daniel Pineda, he's got very good submissions, as most of his wins are by submission. He's got pretty decent striking and a solid ground game. He has solid BJJ, decent takedowns, and a subpar takedown defense. He also has decent cardio, but he can slow down throughout the fight. He does have sneaky KO power, as he does have KOs on his record, so don't sleep on that. For Tucker Lutz, he's got very solid striking, very good pressure on the feet, and throws nice heavy shots to the head and body. He also has pretty decent wrestling, solid takedowns, and solid top control. He can have cardio issues, however, if the fight gets to the ground, but he won't do much on the ground. He just lays and prays, hoping just for while he laughing. It's
That's
true.
hilarious. I love that expression.
It's
Anyways,
true.
keep going.
He lays and prays, and that can turn out to a pretty boring fight. I'm going with Tucker Lutz by decision. Who are you going for, Monique?
Okay, so for this fight, this brings me back. Whenever I see Pineda fight, it brings me back to the fight against Herbert Burns, where he had those elbows on the crucifix that he put on him. Man, that really changed how I thought of Daniel Pineda after that. The Pit, which is Daniel Pineda, I think is gonna come, like, he's coming off a loss, so I think he has this little sense of urgency coming into this fight. And also, Tucker Lutz is also coming off a loss too, so there is that as well. I can understand your analysis of him saying that he's just gonna lay and pray the entire time if he gets it on the ground. And Pineda's not going to let that happen. I think he's going to try to catch him in a sub and possibly a TKO. So I'm going with Pineda in this fight.
Okay, all right, sounds good. To me, Tucker Lutz has the grappling advantage and the ground advantage, and like I said, if he gets it to the ground, he's just gonna lay and pray and just score points just by holding him there. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. No bets on that fight though. All right, let's move on up to the next fight on the card. Scheduled in the men's middleweight division, we have Chidi Njokuani versus Albert Duraev. Chidi Njokuani, he's 22-8, 34 years old, 6'3", with a 80-inch reach. Then we have Albert Duraev. He's 15-4, 34 years old, 5'11", with a 75-inch reach. For Chidi Njokuani, he's got pretty good striking with solid speed and solid KO power. He likes to manage range with good distance control and has decent footwork to go with it. He has pretty decent takedown defense and likes to stand and bang, as he likes to slug it out in his fights. He's very tough with a decent chin, but he can slow down throughout the fight. For Albert Duraev, he's got pretty good wrestling with very solid takedowns and solid top pressure. He has pretty decent ground and pound with pretty decent cage control and a decent ground game. He throws nice solid leg kicks with good pressure on the feet and is very relentless with his takedowns. He also has decent enough cardio to go all 3 rounds. I have to go with the dog here. I got to go with Albert Duraev by decision. Who are you going for, Monique?
I switched so heavily in this fight. Like, you don't understand. I went from Duraev to Chidi, like, pretty much for a good 20 minutes before I had to make my decision. Because Duraev has that ground game that I absolutely love when it comes to watching this in the sport. And obviously I'm a little biased because I do grappling myself. But when it comes to Chidi, I think, he's called Bang Bang for a reason. Like, his strikes, his knees, the ground and pound from him just kind of speaks volumes in his matches. And I think that if he can get that takedown defense under control, I think he has a good chance of winning. So I'm picking Chidi by decision.
No way that he's going to get it done by decision. If he doesn't get the knockout, he's not winning this fight. I can guarantee you that, Monique.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Like, I just think he's going to win regardless of how it's going to happen. But,
Let's move on up to the next fight on the card. Scheduled in the men's flyweight division, we have Alex Perez versus Manel Kape. Alex Perez, he's 24-7, 31 years old, 5'6", with a 65.5-inch reach. Then we have Manel Kape, he's 18-6, 29 years old, 5'5", with a 68-inch reach. Sorry. For Alex Perez, he's got very good striking, very nice jabs, and good 1s and 2s. He throws pretty good combinations on the feet with decent wrestling and decent takedowns. He throws very nice sharp low kicks with very solid takedown defense, and not to mention, he's really willing to slug it out with decent KO power, so look out for that. For Manel Kape, he's got solid striking, who is very fast and very explosive on the feet. He's got good pressure, solid KO power, and likes to bounce in and out of range. And he does that pretty well throughout the fight. He also has decent wrestling, okay takedowns, but he can be wild at times. And those wild times, he can make silly mistakes. He also has pretty solid takedown defense, and he can push the pace for all 3 rounds. I was going back and forth on this fight because this line is a little bit wide for me. I do like Manel Kape. I do think he's dangerous. I'm going with Manel Kape by decision. Who are you going for?
Yeah, I kind of had a toss up with this fight too because I like Alex Perez. I think he's really well rounded. He's only lost to the best in that division, which speaks volumes. When it comes to Kape, he hasn't faced the best in that division so far. So I feel like Perez has that experience on his shoulders. I like Kape. I think that he will get it done, whether it's a flying knee or punches. I think he can TKO or KO Alex Perez, even though he has a good chin. I think he has a solid chance of finishing him in this fight. So I'm picking Kape to win. I don't know how, but I think he's going to win this fight, whatever he chooses.
Yeah, he's gonna win this fight. I agree. I just think the line is a little bit too wide. That's all.
Hmm.
Should be closer in my opinion. But anyway, let's move on up to the next fight on the card. Scheduled in the women's flyweight division, we have Andrea Lee versus Maycee by Barber. Andrea Lee, she's 13 and 6, 34 years old, 5'6", with a 69.5-inch reach. Then we have Maycee Barber. She's 11 and 2, 24 years old, 5'5", with a 65.5-inch reach. For Andrea Lee, she's got a dynamic striking style with pretty solid leg kicks and punches to the body. She mixes her strikes up pretty well in her fights with decent grappling and decent takedowns. She's got okay wrestling, and not to mention her takedown defense is pretty rough. Let's be honest. She needs work in that department. So I don't know how well that will go for her in this fight. For Maycee Barber, she's got pretty good striking, solid boxing, and decent wrestling. She's got pretty decent takedowns with okay ground game as it is improving. She also has a pretty decent takedown defense, but a very subpar takedown accuracy. She also has pretty good cardio to go all 3 rounds and can grind out opponents to a decision victory. And that's exactly what I think is going to happen here. Maycee Barber by decision. Who are you going for, Monique?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I have the future winning this. If you guys, I like putting out some nicknames here and there because I think it's really cool to address them by their nicknames. So Maycee Barber that I'm addressing right now, I think it's gonna go to decision. I think her striking, she hits really hard as we saw against Jillian Robertson. She did lose to Alexa Grasso, which is okay by me because it's Alexa Grasso and obviously she has incredible boxing. Angeli lost to Araujo, which is another big name up there, heavy hitter. So it's just that I think her takedown defense, like you said, needs a lot of work, and I think that Maycee Barber can get her to the ground and pretty much what ground and pound her. Probably we'll see if. I don't think it's going to be a finish. I think it's going to go to decision, but you never know what could happen in this sport, right? So I have Maycee Barber winning by decision. I agree with you, Carlos.
Let's go. I agree. Let's go. I like Maycee Barber. She's a good fighter.
Mhm.
So all right, let's go move on up to the next fight on the card. And this fight should be a banger, folks. I do not expect this fight to go the distance. Scheduled in the men's featherweight division, we have Nate Landwehr versus Austin Lingo. Nate Landwehr, he's 16 and 4, 34 years old, 5'9" with a 70.5-inch reach. Then we have Austin Lingo. He's 9 and 1, 28 years old, 5'10" with a 70-inch reach. For Nate Landwehr, he's definitely fought the tougher competition and has more experience in this fight. He's got decent striking and he likes to move forward with solid pressure on the feet and throws wild big bombs at his opponents. He also has very good finishing ability and doesn't shy away from a war. He's got a good chin, and not to mention he's got very solid KO power with solid volume on the feet and is very exciting in all of his fights. For Austin Lingo, he's got pretty solid striking with decent KO power in his hands, and he's pretty quick on the feet. He throws nice big elbows, knees, and just mixes all of his strikes ups pretty well. He also has decent takedown defense with a solid takedown accuracy, and he's very tough to put out. I have to go with Nate, the trained Landwehr, by knockout or TKO. I think he's gonna get it done, folks. Who are you going for, Monique?
You know what's funny? If I were to pick Landwehr in this fight, I would pick him by sub. Actually, it's I can see why a lot of people, including yourself, would say like KO or TKO in this fight. But for some reason, like his sub game really speaks to me. I think Lingo is more well-rounded than what people think he is in his fights. He is the dog in this fight. I don't know why. I just think his striking is a little bit better just because I know that Landwehr, he doesn't throw too many strikes, but when he does throw strikes, it's very hard. It's pretty accurate. So I'm not surprised if he catches Lingo in this, but I don't know why. I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to pick Lingo in this fight because he's won by decision a couple of times, and I can see him winning this fight again, even though it's against someone like Nate Landwehr. So we'll see. I'm just going to take a risk, and we'll see if it pays off.
All right. Okay. Interesting pick. I do like Nate Landwehr though. They call him the train for a reason because he hits like a train, and if he connects to the chin, he's going lights out, just like his nickname. Let's move on up to the next fight, ladies and gentlemen, which is scheduled to be the co-main event of the evening for UFC Fight Night San Antonio. Vera versus Sandhagen. Scheduled in the women's bantamweight division, we have Holly Holm versus Yana Santos. Holly Holm, she's 14-6, 41 years old, 5'8", with a 69-inch reach. Then we have Yana Santos. She's also 14-6, 33 years old, 5'8", with a 68.5-inch reach. For Holly Holm, a former UFC champion, she's got very good boxing with solid striking and a ton of experience under her belt. She's also fought the tougher competition, and she's just the overall better fighter in my eyes. She likes to jump in and outside of range and does it pretty well with nice leg kicks to the body and moves well on her feet. Not to mention she's got a solid takedown defense and very tough. For Yana Santos, she has decent striking, decent aggressiveness, and decent kicks. She also has decent cardio, decent grappling, okay submissions. She's pretty decent everywhere the fight goes. She's not great anywhere, but she's good everywhere, if that makes sense. But she's been pretty inactive, and she hasn't done much in the UFC. So I have to go with the more experienced fighter, the former champion, Holly Holm, by decision. Who are you going for, Monique?
Yeah, I definitely think the preacher's daughter wants to get back into the win column for sure. It's funny because Yana Santos won against Caitlin Vieira, and then Holly Holm recently lost to Caitlin Vieira, which is kind of a fun tidbit if you want to compare records here and there. I think that Holly Holm's striking is going to outweigh Yana Santos. Like you said, she is decent everywhere, but she's not great anywhere. So I definitely agree with that kind of assessment. I don't know how this fight's going to end. I don't know if it's going to be a KO because I think Santos is pretty tough in her own right. It can go to decision, and I bet you it would go into Holly Holm's favor. Wherever this fight goes in the end, I think that Holly Holm's just going to get it done, and she's going to be back in the win column very, very soon.
I agree. She's got a very short window to come back as well as that 41 age does scare me a little bit. She is slowing down a little bit, but I think 3 rounds does favor her in this fight, and that's why I picked her because she's the tougher fighter in my opinion. She's a former champion. She's been in there with the best, and yeah, I just think she gets it done. All right, let's move on up to the next fight, ladies and gentlemen, which is scheduled to be the main event of the evening for UFC Fight Night San Antonio, Vera versus Sandhagen. But before we do the breakdown, folks, do us a favor. Make sure to subscribe, smash that like button, hit that notification bell each and every single week. We are here breaking down UFC fights for every single UFC fight night and UFC pay-per-views. And make sure to join us at the end of the video for our best dog of the card and our lock of the card for this UFC Fight Night San Antonio. Scheduled in the main event Men's bantamweight division. We have Marlon Vera versus Corey Sandhagen. Marlon Vera, he's 22, 7 and 1, 30 years old, 5'8" with a 70.5-inch reach. Then we have Corey Sandhagen. He's 15 and 4, 30 years old, 5'11" with a 70-inch reach. For Marlon Vera, he's got very solid striking with a good Muay Thai style, who has pretty good variety of attacks, and he has pretty good submissions and a sneaky ground game. He throws very nice leg kicks and kicks to the body. He also has a decent amount of KO power and a good finishing ability. Not to mention, he does have pretty decent takedowns and will never quit in his fights. For Corey Sandhagen, he's got pretty solid fluid striking with a solid KO power and pretty fast on the feet. He throws pretty good combinations with solid volume, and he mixes all of his strikes up pretty well throughout the fight. He's got good punches, good kicks, good knees, and good elbows. He also has good cardio with decent takedown defense and a very tough opponent to put out. This is going to be a banger fight, folks. And like I said in the beginning of the video, whoever wins this fight should be the next contender for the Bantamweight Championship. I have to go with Marlon Chito Vera inside the distance. He's going to get it done, folks. Let's go. Who are you going for, Monique?
I'm gonna like switch my pick right now. Dude, okay. I had Sandhagen winning because of his unorthodox kind of style. But I feel like Marlon Vera is very, very underrated as a fighter. He is so smart in the octagon. And that's one thing that I forgot to, I guess, consider when analyzing this fight. So I'm leaning towards Marlon Chito Vera. I think he's a plus 145 or something on the lines right now. So it's not like, crazy good odds. But if you want to parlay him, that'd be a really smart move, I think. I think that he's going to figure out Sandhagen's game, really fast. Even though Sandhagen, I know, has some tricks up his sleeve, and I can see that. Both their resumes are incredible. Vera's on a freaking roll right now. He's on a 4-fight win streak. I can definitely see him winning this fight. So I'm leaning towards Marlon Vera, and I was choosing Corey Sandhagen in the beginning, but, you kind of brought up some good points, and so let's go Vera. Let's bring it. Let's get that 145. Let's do it.
I'm glad I can change your mind, Monique. I'm serious. I'm glad I can change your mind. I just think that Marlon Vera, he has all the tools to beat Corey Sandhagen. And yeah, I just think this is going to be a banger fight. It should be exciting. And I did bet Marlon Vera as an underdog, but he's not my dog of the card. You're going to have to stay tuned for that coming up right now. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is CJP UFC Bets with Monique from Fights Unwrapped. Make sure to check her out. Make sure to sub to her channel, follow her on social media, and make sure to subscribe to this channel and like our videos, comment on this video. CJP UFC Bets here to reveal our dog of the card for UFC Fight Night San Antonio, Vera versus Sandhagen. My dog of the card is Albert Duraev. I think he's going to get it done. He's got the grappling advantage in that fight, and I think he's going to have the dog in him in that fight against Chidi Bang Bang and Njokuani. So give me Albert Duraev by decision as my dog of the card. Who's your dog of the card, Monique?
Yeah, I couldn't pass this up, guys. Like, when it came to picking the dog of the card, I had to go with Austin Lingo. I honestly think he's very underrated, and he's super well-rounded as a fighter, so I can't wait to see his performance against his opponent. I think it's probably going to go to decision. I believe he's a plus 235 on the line, so if anyone wants to bet him, it's not a bad bet to go.
Well, there you go, folks. My dog of the card, Albert Duraev, and for my co-host Monique, she's going with Austin Lingo. Tail at your own risk. and, and now coming up is our lock of the card for UFC Fight Night San Antonio right now. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here again to reveal our lock of the card for UFC San Antonio, Vera versus Sandhagen. But before we do a reveal, make sure to subscribe, make sure to comment on the video, the video, support us. Make sure to follow my friend Monique at Fight Unwrapped. She does her good stuff over there, so make sure to give her a follow and a sub. My lock of the card for UFC San Antonio, Vera versus Sandhagen. My lock of the card is Manuel Torres. He's going to get it done, folks. That's going to be an easy fight for him. He's going to be in some of my parlays. Who's your lock of the card, Monique?
Yeah, I'm gonna switch it up because I did have a lock of the card, and now I think I'm gonna change it if the odds are in my favor in this one, which I think they are. My lock of the card is Holly Holm. I think she's gonna get it done, folks. I think she's gonna win by either decision or ground and pound. I can definitely see that happening. So anyone wants to tail that, you can. I think it's gonna be an easy win for her.
Well, there you go, folks. My lock of the card, Manuel Torres. And for my co host, Monique, she's going with the preacher's daughter. So make sure to join us next week for another great UFC breakdown. Subscribe, like the video, and comment on the video who your dog of the card is, who your lock of the card is, and who your picks are. Don't be talking crap about my picks if you don't post your picks, right, Monique?
Oh yeah, for sure, man.
And if you want to plug your show one more time, go right ahead, man.
Yeah, thanks, Carlos. So if anyone wants to follow us on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, it's Fights Unwrapped. Just look us up on there. You can find us easily. We do a show on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern with my co-hosts Alec and Dustin. So tune in. We're gonna break down the UFC San Antonio card again, and we're gonna talk about a few headlines from UFC 286. So please stay tuned.
Well, there you go, folks. Go follow my friend Monique and make sure to join us next week. We're out of here, folks.